I don't feel confident anymore, even though people look up to me and they depend on me. Now I see the irony of that, especially in this particular channel, and the fact that I'm a best-selling author. But it's important for me to be truthful and to tell you exactly how I feel right now, so I can compare to the research for you, and I can just be honest with you. I think it's time to be honest in ways, well, in all ways. There's no point being partially honest, is there? And to say that my confidence is way down would be true. But in saying that, it's one thing to have your confidence way down, but to then know that there's people depending on you to have the confidence way up or higher becomes a problem for me. And I'm not a person who likes to blame others. I do recall when I was younger, and even this morning I read something about this, about how we need to take responsibility. But when I was younger, I do recall having the moments, tantrums. When I say younger, I'm talking about very young, like as a child. And those tantrums of energy, dissatisfaction for whatever, wanting something to go your way, frustrations, very quickly turned into myself. I didn't have to be told. And of course, after that, I became very good, as a lot of children do, at controlling your energies and your frustrations. But channeling it is a different matter altogether. Whereas if you can figure it out straight away that the book stops with you, then the question of where to channel becomes, well, the only option really, but it's how you channel those, be it tantrums or potential frustrations, dissatisfactions and that. But if that gets you stuck in a lack of confidence, it's a sticky place to be, and it's not good. And it has to be moved. You have to be moved from it. You have to go into a different place, really. And that's where I want to go to. But right now I'm stuck. And all I can think of is trying to get out of it. But then when I think that way, I start thinking about why it is that I feel this way. And I think, unlike a lot of times when worries or things start pressurizing me, I think this time I do know. And this is the part I don't like, though, because it then complicates things in order for me to get back to the confident way of things and that feeling of confidence. And I've said it before in some different way, but frustrations come from leadership of others and by others, not leadership of others, not my leadership of others, leadership by others. And that's what challenges me and irks me, because it's a continuum where you've got levels of leadership. For us humans on planet Earth, we have got this system worked out. Maybe it's rigged, maybe it's not, but from when we were very young, and this is where it comes from, the levels are lower. They're down at almost like an elevator. Ground zero, and you've got 1, 2, 3, and so on. It goes up and up and up and up to the Empire State Building type of height of things. And you can see that a lot in corporations, where there are so many promotional opportunities and middle managers. And then there's lots of money for you to take on responsibility. And it's the same way in a slightly different manner with regard to the public service, with regard to civil servants in countries or if we go into politics, if we go into anything, really, you have administration, you have levels. And that comes from, believe it or not, our cognitive thinking and how we have been, as human beings, coded towards numbers. How we learned digits, going way back when we first went to school. So when we were little children, we learned numbers. We learned the common basis of numbers, 0 and 1. If we look at Morse code, how people got through wars and communicated in that way, 0 and 1. Desperation, 0 and 1. 1 being positive, 0 being negative. We see that in math, for example. However, if you put the 0 at the other side of the 1, it can become very positive. So numbers have meaning. And when it's educated to you at a very young age, things like that in your brain become welded, become a constant and undisputed fact for you and for all those around you. So if you're in a progressive country right now watching this, and you have had a primary education, elementary education and that, even if you just went for a year or two, the basis of number is a fact in your mind that there's no argument. Now, if you go down the line towards calculus and more complex entities within mathematics, teenage years, adolescence, maybe college, if you did a bit of maths or engineering, something like that, it might be things that you got like confused about. Maybe in even accounting, people are afraid of doing those type of subjects because they think it involves too many numbers, too much mathematics, even though it doesn't. But people perceive it that way. So we're not talking about like complex mathematics. The basis of all mathematics, the fact of numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, infinity and beyond with numbers. How you can go as high as you want, as low as you want, integers, negatives. And when something like that is educated to you, it's the same way as having a basic common law of the universe educated to you. Because when a child is very small, and you were at one stage, as was I, we learned not to put our hand or any part of our anatomy near the fire. So even though it looked incredible, beautiful in fact, it is also treacherous and can kill like that. So we were attracted to something that was just amazing, flickering in the light and darkness. Several colours intermingled together. But yet, even getting close to it, like getting close to this little kind of hanging vine, it's like we couldn't even get that close to it because of the heat. And so we were educated to stay back. Just stay back from it. If you stay back from it, you respect it. Because we know if we got anywhere closer, it would burn us if we touched it. Oh no, that can't happen because then our fingers, our hand is gone and we have huge troubles for life. And why I'm explaining all of that is because if something like that is welded into number and it becomes a fact, and it's the basis of what it is that you believe, you become stuck on that. And if you cannot change that, and when we go to the hierarchy of corporations and governments and the basis of number, where 0 is the lower level of the elevator there, and this hierarchy rises 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and as you go higher and up as far as you want, like the Empire State Building in an elevator sense or an analogy. But if you go higher, it means ultimately, and others see it and you believe it, that it's better. So that means that if you work for longer, if you work better, if you work maybe another job or the product or service better, therefore you're given ownership in a certain degree. I call it management. And that assumes the role of leadership. But, as we all know, there's not always great leaders out there. So rewarding loyalty might be the best way. That might happen, say, in the public service, in the civil service, governments, with anything government run, or local entities with regard to that. But then we go into the private industry and people are like, come on, we need money now. We need to get things done. We need to unfold this. We need to go faster, bigger, further. And so other elements are judged. But if we keep it very simple now, it's still a hierarchical approach, 0 upwards. You go to education, same thing. You start off at elementary. Oh, congratulations, you graduate. And so therefore, here you are now. You're going into high school, secondary school, junior school. And then this then brings you or allows you to think better. So therefore, we'll give you more, higher. You can go to college now, even if it's just junior college. That's okay, because that's a higher realm. It's up there. And your ages are climbing at the same time. So therefore, you can think when you're younger, I'm going to be gradual, like the elevator going up. So there's that hierarchical approach, and that continues in the workforce. And some people strive to be managers, and then they strive to get up the corporate ladder. That's the ladder. The ladder is like the elevator in that regard. And that's cool. And then some people diversify off. They go, okay, I'm 25, 30. I want now to look at a semblance of my own life when I was younger. And I had sisters and brothers, and I had a nice family, or I didn't have a nice family. And I want that for myself. So they diversify. But again, it's number based. It's back to one daughter, one son, one husband, one wife, whatever. Or it's none, 0 and 1 again. So we think a lot in numbers, and then this promotes our confidence in that way. So because of this numerical approach, because we have learned it so young, we are convinced that numbers are going to count. Not only the basic numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but numbers across different levels and across different areas. Let me explain that. It means that if we go to our local, say, public representative, maybe a councillor or something like that, we know, say, from a democratic point of view, this person was voted in. And so they must know something. They've got to. But depending on where you're from or where you're living, the amount of votes are calculated on what's called a quota, essentially. And that quota is represented by numbers. So that's a number of people. Now that can be a very large number, there's no doubt about it. But in order for that person initially to go to have any chance, snowball's chance in hell, of ever getting voted in the first place, they, somewhere along the line, whether they're recent or many, many years ago, and some people in local government, they often are student representatives first, or when they were in school, they're student councillors, or they're prefects, or something like that. They represent, but they represent a student body in some way, or even when they're younger. People just go, oh, cheer them on, and they go, come on, that's it. And that's a vote. That's essentially is a vote, where adults look at the child or the group of children and say, this one here is liked, or they follow what this one does. So if we can control that one, here's the number 1 again, then we can control the posse. We can figure out what's going on with the rest. We'll go through and we'll channel towards one, and therefore it'll filter to the others, rather than the shotgun approach where we're shooting at all individuals and we don't understand this one who is the natural leader, say, and we can't communicate with them, well, the reality is peers are going to be stronger in many ways as an influencer than the adult in that regard. And if that person, say, continues on and continues on and continues on, they begin to understand that when they were younger, they got preferred because of numbers. And so if you can play the numbers game, and this is in the city council or a county council or a borough or in a any democratic local area, national area, regional area, whatever. And it doesn't really matter if it's a small country or a small area you're in or a bigger country. It's all a numbers game. If you can convince a lot of people, almost like mutiny on a bounty, mutiny on a ship, you can't get to the leader. You can convince several people to influence the leader, even that one leader can be influenced by a greater number, be it 2, 3, 4 of respected elders or respected people. So you play the numbers. So politicians know this. They're well aware. And they're well aware of the dates on a particular calendar. They're well aware of the times of year and the seasons as they change. They're well aware of what happens in January. It's cold. People think, I want to be inside. So then they think of the products that make them happy. Guess what? It's going to be home heating oil. It's going to be things like solid fuels or gas, electricity. Or if they irritate them, they have to be aware of the number, here's the number word again, of months or years towards the next election, because that's going to bite them in the ass. If it's February, it's cold as well. Home heating, that could be a thing, but also light or the emergence of spring is on people's mind. So they're aware of any products or services that can help with that to keep people or make people more positive. Therefore, they put the budget at certain times of the year because they know of the certain thinking behind people and groups of people in that regard. So then when a new politician comes in or new representative comes in, they, even if they're the dumbest person, America's dumbest criminal if you wish, in waiting, they then adapt to the culture of the many being the numbers of politicians. That's in the public sphere. But if we go to the private sphere and we go back to the corporations and that, and you could argue things are controlled by money, controlled by billionaires, controlled by millionaires, or controlled by politicians, either or. Okay, so we go to we go to the corporations, and the corporations then are looking at the bottom line. The bottom line is money, and the money is represented by the lula, by numbers of money. And like I heard a wonderful thing there recently with regard to the cost of a sports athlete. They were talking about how the money was rising up, and they were kind of saying, how has it risen up so much in the last year in the transfer market? And one guy just described it. He said, well, if that guy's worth like 80 million, that other guy's worth phone number. I was thinking, what the hell is that? 80 million. I was thinking 80, phone number. And then I thought, 80, that's 2 digits. So even if it's 112, there's at least 3 or 4 numbers. A prefix is at least 3 that I know of anyway, and a phone number. So that's more than 80. That's 3 numbers as opposed to 2. So even if it's 112, it's much more than 80, because we know that going back to when we're children. And so a phone number usually is several numbers, like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or so on. And therefore we automatically think bigger numbers, more expensive. And then what do we think? We also then think more quality, more value, must be better. And then we go to the corporate and we start thinking the person that is the manager or the CEO or whatever, they're getting paid so much. Telephone numbers, big money. Therefore, they must be better. They must have that better value or quality. But that's not necessarily true, because we know it's a system. And it's an age-old system. You could say it works, or it doesn't. But it doesn't look after the individuals. In that, People, and we've heard the old saying, sheep's clothing. Be careful. There are people out there that will hide. And they will hide for a long time. And be they go into politics, be they go into corporations, the reality is there are people out there that will be very quiet and they will wiggle their way along. And eventually they will get to where they want to go. And that's fine. These can be great people, by the way. But there can also be people that are not so great, in that they don't think for the benefit of others and they think only for themselves, or a destructive way. And it only takes one, there's the number thing again, one, not zero, but one, to destruct and become head of the pack in some regard. In the research, Harrison and Tracy have an excellent paper with regard to how confidence is essential to be a great leader. But they also say that it must be balanced with humility, adaptability, and openness to change. Now, this confidence for, say, the likes of world leaders can be beneficial in pressurable situations. They say that it can mean they make decisions quickly and timely when pressure is on, when things are really pushing at others and they wouldn't be able to make the same decision, actually pressing the button on it. But the problem with that also is, if you're not open in other ways, as mentioned, you can be open then only to arrogance of your thought. So essentially what they're saying is you need to have self-belief if you're going to be in the same belief pattern, say, as a world leader, or what they should be, a great world leader, so that you avoid having ego. And confidence is not ego. And then when people like that, and it only takes the one, becomes the head of the pack, the sheep become convinced because they have the number, be it their salary being the big number or the voting behind them being a big number. They're convinced that there has to be great leadership in this person. There has to be good direction in this person for others. Because one of the things, of course, a leader does is they should pull or direct others along with them to a better place for whatever they represent. But that's not always the case. And because of that, it only takes one that is not applying themselves in that regard, and in fact may have never tried to do that, and had a completely different prerogative to begin with. And that skews the many. And then that brings me back to the confidence part. Those then that are under this, in this elevator analogy, again in this hierarchy, that is how people get on in life, how they progress. If that is there, and that structure is there, be it in the public or the private industries, what happens then is that we all become lower down in the pecking order. And we're constantly striving and competing within our lives to go a little bit higher up. And some of us reach levels that we're very happy with. Some of us just want to go to the very top. That's individualistic. But all of us are competing. And if we're not competing to go further, we're competing just to keep the status quo for ourselves. Because we want to build a life, because we're human. So 9 to 5, we are competing. And then the energy goes, like playing or doing an athletic or musical or dramatic performance. At some stage you need a break. You have a lunch break, maybe a morning break or an evening break. But at some stage you have to stop for the day. It's too much. So that's how industries came. And they said, oh, okay, look, we need to be able to get sustainable energy out of our workforce. So they named it a 9 to 5. That's how they calculated it. 9 to 5, 8 hours. Number. Based on number again. So, that means we're all competing to try and get ahead, or to get the status quo, which essentially is the requirement to get ahead all the time. Because if you want to keep the status quo, someone younger, bigger, stronger is coming along, and better, more up to date, and a younger brain in many ways can learn things better. So you like the status quo, you like where you are in life, that's cool. But it's not going to last forever. There's always competition, there's always more. There's always changing industry around you. So you have to adapt. You have to learn a bit more. You have to go a little bit further at some stage. But if you have people that are ahead at the very, very top, that are not doing the right thing, or making rash decisions, or are making sure that they are self-serving, this can be hugely destructive for the hierarchy down below. Because even, say, if your boss or your manager is very kind, very considerate, very people-oriented, that's cool. But they at some stage will be forced to make a managerial decision that is perhaps very unnerving for them, very uncomfortable for them with regard to their personality type. But at the end of the day, if they want to be human, and they have just done the minimum, which is to accept the status quo, and they have decided now it's time to look after other aspects of my life, such as after 5 o'clock in the evening, I'll go out, I'll meet a lady, and I will copulate. In other words, I will have a home life, a family life. Nothing wrong with that, very admirable. Okay. And if your boss is female, same way. They choose that, or that happens to them. All right. But that means they have dependents now. They have people, mouths to feed. They have 4 walls to construct in some way, or to rent, or to buy. Which means they need a home, which means they have a lot of overheads, which means they're under pressure themselves. And the decisions they made to become the boss in the first place, or the decision to get to that point of status quo, which is a very minimum. This has been kind in this example. The teeth are out, the sharks are out, if we're being competitive. It means that even if they're a person that just likes the status quo, likes that slightly upper level of management, that means that despite the fact that they made best buddies with you, even if you started on the first day together many years ago, and you have that great chemistry, that is gone. That is completely and utterly gone when it becomes more personal. And if it becomes more personal to a boss, a manager, someone in leadership, therefore they make a choice based off the pressures that they are under, they individually are under, or those closest to them are under. So if you're not in that little circle, you better get yourself in it. But most people aren't when it comes to what the human need of a person is. Because friendship is great, but there are other things that are more pressing, such as the need to copulate, such as the need to survive and pay the bills, and eat and drink water, and have a breakfast waiting for you in a hot shower. And when we see further up the hierarchy, people making rash decisions, or people making decisions based on nothing other than ego, or a skewed legacy, or form of thinking, it filters down throughout. And that can be both public and private. And if it only gets into one person, say in a family, if If you have two breadwinners, a husband and a wife, maybe you're one of them, and it happens in one of their occupations where the boss goes rogue, or the boss is great, but eventually they're forced to make a trickier decision. And that decision means that you're it. You're out there. You're gone. Your status quo, your lovely little desk in the corner is now challenged. Well, you have no other way of getting ahead. You could end up middle-aged, jobless, very easily. Now, that's just the ordinary possibility if you have a very poor manager or a leader on top of it all who has a lifestyle or a decision-making capacity based on whims or ego. What if then, I've mentioned the public industry and the private industry, the public common good, theoretically, that it should be, is thwarted by a person who has nothing but their own, or people that have nothing but their own goods or egos or mismanagement in mind, skewed legacy, whatever. And the private industry goes rogue, or both of them then decide to work in cahoots together in some way. What happens then? Even if it's just momentarily, even if it's just temporarily. Well, that's when products and services can be brought in to change things. I'll give you a little example. In the World Wars 1 and 2, it has been proven and it has been covered. I remember reading this throughout one of my studies years ago, where it was proven, I think it was World War II, I stand to be correct on that, but in the research it was showing that there was, as we well know, early 1940s, late 1930s, a lot less media out there insofar as methods and modes of communication. There was no computer, there was no internet. Television channels were limited. Print media was a thing, a real thing. It was a type of media. Radio. Those were the three big ones. So, because I go back on my earlier example to basic learning when we're very small, and we have the basis of number, rather than getting all jumbled up in calculus or any type of advanced mathematics, which a lot of people just don't want to do, and that's fine. We still have the understanding of numbers: 0, 1, upwards is a high number, down below is a minus number. We get the picture, okay. But at that same time in life, you, I, we all learned, even if we have the most basic education, even if we never went into a school in our lives, for the basis of practicality to live our lives, we needed to know that there was letters there. There was numbers and letters, usually jumbled together or done in the same regard, in the same way. Usually you had English learning right after mathematics or before it, early in the morning when the brain is fresh. Now some people are illiterate, and that's okay too, but they still understand and probably understand it more than literate people, the importance of letters and words. 26 letters in the alphabet, A, B, C, right up to Z, right down to Z. Similar to numbers, because you have numbers 0, 1, 2, 3. So there's a sequence there, and it goes up and up. You have letters that all individually mean different things, and then used together, similarly to numbers, can represent different meanings, such as numbers 0 and 1 is just 1. It's a very low number. 0 on its own, lower again. But 0 on the right side of 1 means 10 times the value of 1. In a similar manner, you have letters where you have A, B, C. Doesn't mean much in any word formation. But if you use B and A, it becomes a word ba. Ba ba black sheep. Ka, C-A. Start of a name. Karen or Cannell as a surname, for example. It's now what's called a phonic. We have the sounds of the ah and the ka and the ba, the basics. You put them all together, you come up with abracadabra, a word. Similarly, you can get loads of words for places. Aha, now we need a map. Now the human being with the numbers, GPS and the letters, can jumble them all together and somehow can become an adventurer. And how the heck was USA discovered? The brain of one human to get there. So, it means a lot. To advance in some ways, we need the numbers, we need the letters. The way of using all of this together is so important for us. So why was, and is it so important then for the letters and the syllables and the phonics and the numbers all to be so pivotal to us? Well, back in World War II-ish, it was known that the print media printed on the broadsheets and the very respected papers lies to control the masses, to dampen down the actions effectively of a lot of people who are feeling stressed or depressed. And so that was a time where, and that's factual, that was a time where the leaders of the time were fighting, looking for dominance and power for one nation over another. Some nations were supporting each other. But if we remove the nations, we remove the voting, the people and the populations, yes, there were soldiers, and God bless them. And many did it for their own reasons and fought and maybe had no choice. But behind all of that was human thought by a handful of individuals who were conducting the whole thing. And despite being many, many numbers of years later, in the present day, in spite of the changes and the differences that are in this present world and those that will come, and in spite of the fact that we have evolutions, as we call them, or revolutions more so, like we've had the Industrial Revolution in the meantime, say. And if we look at, and we talk about numbers, we look about how we plan our lives. And I've mentioned school, and we all have to go to school, and suddenly it becomes a thing where we all went through it as children. I don't want to go to school. Why do I have to go to school? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't want to learn this calculus stuff. I know basics of number. I'm fine. I can go to a shop with money and pay and get change and so on. We see the phones, numbers 1 to 9, 0 at the bottom. We see basic lettering. That's all I need. Fine. That's the truth is, as an adult, that's usually what we use. Let's not try to pull the wool over the eyes of a 5-year-old who already knows. But that's what we do. And then we stand by the law of it all. But for all the benefits of this wonderful schooling system and education system we have, we should be applauding that 5-year-old or that young person for having the cop on instinct, whatever you call it, to be able to question that. But they have to legally fall into the system. And essentially that's to control the masses. Because you're of a certain age, and if we get all young children with all that energy out on the streets, and they all want what they want. Therefore, we will have anarchy, because we can't put all children into prison. That wouldn't be right. So we have to put a law on them. And we won't employ people such as police, uniformed, or soldiers. That would cost too much. Taxpayer wouldn't be happy. We'll just make sure the adult is threatened, essentially, and the adult being the parent. So it's up to them. And most parents salute, and they do it, and that's fine. And there's an argument that that's very good for a child, and that's fine too. Good. But it's cognitively what I'm concerned with there, is how we learn in that regard. Because if we fast forward again towards adulthood, we realize we go into our time of college, and there's rules and regulations to control the masses. Workplaces, rules and regulations, 9 to 5. Don't dare come in at 8. Yeah, we want you to work hard, but we're not paying somebody to come in and open the door for you. The work you do is not as good as the work of 10 others. So we have to have one door. You're not special. We're not going to pay you anymore. We have trade unions for jobs, for employees. Vital component of many industries. And we talked about the Industrial Revolution. Hugely important for a lot of, say, manual workers, back-breaking work, miners, people that did a lot of work. But then we switch to the modern era. And now we have things that are going to do the work for us. Robots. Who's going to represent them? That's the interesting thing. What if they're dissatisfied? And then we switch to our leaders, our human leaders. And we look at the fact of the matter being control the masses has been a mantra and a major tactic. And there's nothing wrong with that, because most of us, from a huge point of view, like to be part of the flock, like to be part of a nation, like to be part of a group or a community or a workforce, a team. And we have sports. We get passionate about it. And we understand, and we're empathetic to a certain degree about that. That something I leave behind can be left behind for others. And that's okay. That's a good sign of humanity. We should all strive for that part. But the difference between the hierarchy is that at the height, you can try to control the masses lower down. The very basics of it all. Now, whatever tactics you employ, now that's a different thing. But you certainly have to make sure that you're biding time and you're buying yourself time in order to contemplate and to critique how you're going to do and react as a leader to what is happening in real time all around the world. And now with the internet and instantaneous information, leaders all around the world are having information thrown on their desks. In fact, they don't even have to go to their desks. As soon as they wake up, they can pull out the phone and do a quick news check straight away, like us all. And then they realize straight away, within an instant, the ramifications of everything that happens on a given day, because this thing called the butterfly effect occurs. And as we know, with the butterfly effect, basically put, whatever happens, the butterfly's wing, way millions of miles away, will eventually come back to me, or will go through others to me in some way. There's always an action, reaction. So, the leader at the top say a global leader, a new world leader, whatever the world order is right now, who knows, the time of recording. But with that, you have got the potential for anarchy straight away biting the backside of the leader. Once they wake in the morning, they see that. And that amount of information, that amount of potential for reactivity, be it from the masses of people, is potentially catastrophic. And anyone on that perch is going to have that drive to leave something behind. Because if you have gone through all the levels right up to the top, and that's been your thing, to climb the levels, to get to the top of the elevator, to have that bird's eye view at the top of the Empire State Building, to look down upon others, whether you want to do it for good or for bad is another thing, but to be able to press the button that affects many. If you can come into that potential, you certainly want to make your mark, because we do not stop as people. We are competitive, if only to keep the status quo. And so all of the people along the line are directed by the leader in some way. Call it the butterfly effect, skewed, whatever you want to call it. Whatever way you're understanding it right now. But if there's a hierarchy, which there is, it means that despite us being leaders in our own realms, we are potentially at the whims, always at the whims, of what happens higher up the ranking system. So it is becoming of ourselves as Democrats or Republicans or people that have a vote or seek a vote in this world to lead in the way we think others should lead, to want certain thinking to be in power for our lifetimes. Because that is our representation of being right. Or that is our representation, this is kind of dangerous, but that is our representation of what is aligned with our thinking, whether it's right or wrong. But it's self-serving. We have to watch out for that, because they can fall through the cracks, those people, and the cracks can go up as well. And they can get to the top. But everybody under the leader has a barometer of confidence. And if you're looking up and there are cracks there, and if you want to go higher, or even if you just want the status quo, you have to reach a little bit more, or if you have to repeat what you did in the first place to continue the status quo, to keep your lifestyle as it is. Cost of living, for example, is an economic term. Just call it living. If you have to sustain your cost of living, or you're challenged by that cost of living, or the economics of a particular time, then you're curious automatically to learn more. How can I sustain this? So you look for information. And so we have to realize that that information is going to feed into our confidence building. Because otherwise, our confidence will be lower. And our silent confidence is the worst part, insofar as we are thinking about how the leaders are so dumb, or so bad, or worse again, so evil, potentially. And that then mirrors into our own confidence in our own lives about what we feel like doing, what we must do as human beings, what we're here to do. And if you can figure that out as a person yourself, you are streets ahead of others to know what you're there for, to be in that general area of doing it, to only have to look months or years away and go, oh my gosh, I'm going to attain that, and that's going to happen for me. My life's going to be set, and I'm going to be so happy. And if you are that person, you are miles ahead of everybody else. In fact, you're further down a road. They can't even see the road. They can't even see the path leading to the road. And most will never get there. And they'll just be the original robot following the generational thinking. And this is in the research too, where people do as per what their families have done, and the ways they've been reared, because that goes back to that early brain as well, how we learned certain things that became subconscious habits, like the zeros and ones of learning. And so before we knew it, we were just doing these things. And then when it was pointed out to us through relationships, friendships, how weird that was, how funny it was, how peculiar that was, maybe when a child came over to stay party or sleepover, or maybe you had a partner, an early partner in life, and they laughed at the quirky things and you thought they were normal, that's what happened in every household, but it didn't, and it's destructive, or it's weird, or it's not beneficial, or it's inefficient. You still did it because that's what you were familiar with, and what you're familiar with psychologically is what you do. That's what we all do in general. So, despite the fact that we have intelligence, and despite the fact that we can learn, and we further learn other things, and we can step aside and objectively look at our own selves from a distance. And maybe if we visit home for a birthday or an anniversary or a funeral or something like that, and you're away from home for a long time, you get this feeling about going home, and it kind of shrivels you up a little bit, and you kind of feel, oh, I don't want to go back into that state of the family where I was the ugly one, or I was the intelligent one, or I was the nerdy one, or I was the small one, or I was the big one, or I was the scroungy one, or I was the whatever caricature that you were labelled with or felt you had to be, the peacemaker, the joker, to keep saying in a family. And even though despite you're an adult now, the leader is the father or the mother. And you're going back as an adult, your confidence, you're pulling back. You can't, even though you know, you might have your own children, you might have reared them perfectly, but you go back, and you go back to that child or that teenage bedroom, you stay at night. It's different. And that disrupts your pattern. And that pattern is being disrupted when our confidence goes, or our thinking towards how we as leaders, or us as beings projecting ourselves to be better leaders, going up the hierarchy in life, trying to help others, doing the right thing, but seeing no map, because like Indiana Jones, where he grabbed his hat and pulled it from underneath the dropping or drooping gate or whatever it was. You have to pull that map away, and suddenly there's nothing there. It's gone, because there's no leadership, or if there is, it's skewed leadership, it's egotistical leadership. And the higher up you go, you see that more, and it's more obvious to you. So what do? Do you keep the status quo, or do you accept that this is it? And that's a conundrum. But these are the structures that we're in. If we go back to, say, a pandemic, when governments of times in all countries did different things, we learned an awful lot. How sociologically things could be controlled, or sociologically things could be managed, whichever side of the fence you're on. But certainly masses of people were under threat. The right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. But the ramifications are huge. And for me, I know ultimately that despite others being ahead or leaders of the world, I know one thing, even if they do the wrong, there must be a human leader in some way. We have to have somebody in that seat. It could be the blind attempting to lead the blind, or the lost shepherd bringing the sheep the wrong way. But you can stand out from the pack too, and you can go your own route. And with that, know that what's ahead of you is trusted, and that it's a path you can see, a path you can dig, a road you can take. Because at the end of it all, nobody else is taking it with you, only you. And you are the captain of your own ship. And when you do that, that's when others see that. So take the information you have, take the learning from those higher up on the echelon, in the hierarchy, with a pinch of salt. See the mistakes they've made and avoid those pitfalls yourself. And lead yourself, and others will follow.
Thanks for watching. Please like this video. If you subscribe, comment to say that you have, and we'll look after you.